I got hit by a car. I had that experience, that near-death experience. I had a voice, and it really just talked to me about the fact that, I wasn't done. I had to return. I have a mission. I have a purpose that only I can do.
You made your first seven figures at 21.
Correct. Yeah.
We are here with Tracy Repchuk. I am so excited to have you. We had a quick conversation before the interview. I feel like we instantly clicked, but enough about us, or me rather. Let me share a bit more about you. The reason why I'm so excited is because Tracy is a 9 times international best-selling author. She appeared on Forbes 27 times, has won awards from the Senate, the Assembly, the White House, and President Obama, and helps you create more income, influence, and impact for your purpose-driven goals. However, there's something I found out about Tracy that absolutely blew my mind. When she was 3 years old, she had a near-death experience. I'm not going to spoil it too much. Tracy would love you to talk more about it. But she had that near-death experience changed her life completely. And you might say, well, at 3, that's crazy. Well, when much later in life, you will see exactly the proof of how that thing changed her life. Tracy, you know what? You take it away. Tell us exactly what happened.
Well, literally, I'm 3 years old. We're visiting family in Pennsylvania. My parents are in the kitchen. Everyone's chatting, and I'm bored. So I go outside, run across the street, go and look at some things that I saw over there, and realize I've been away for quite a while. So I turn around and bolt back into the street. And of course, I got hit by a car. And I had that experience, that near-death experience, upon which, I had a voice. People wonder, do you see things? I had the voice, and it really just talked to me about the fact that, I wasn't done. I had to return. I have a mission. I have a purpose that only I can do. And I literally have been driven by that moment. And you mentioned 3 years old. Honestly, at the age of 5, I started seeking out different religions. I'm like boarding buses to go to Bible schools to find out the answers I needed to get them. And as a result
That is
of this
so interesting.
drive, I started a business at the age of 19 already.
And I think you made your first seven figures at 21 or 23, if I remember correctly.
Correct. Yeah.
Which one, 21 or
It was
23?
21. Yeah. So
Right.
I bought a BMW at 20, and I, made my first million at 21. And then I started with the properties, and I started with the Mercedes, and it just,
There we go.
yeah.
And you had like a software business back then, right?
I did. So I graduated as a computer programmer, and I additionally got a certified management accountant's designation, and built this software company. And our software was distributed worldwide. We were working with JCPenney, governments, banks, Home Depot, major Fortune 100 companies. It was quite the ride.
That is so crazy, and it's so important to have the right voice at the right time. And I like to keep it with the voice theme, because when we first met, you also mentioned a college teacher that asked you, what do you want to be, right? And that was a very life-changing voice as well. Tell us a bit more about that. And I promise there's a reason why I'm kind of leading this conversation a bit, because there's a payoff. So
I love it. I love that we're building this thread, because it is these moments that have impacted my life, and probably others as well. So I'm in college. I'm like about to graduate. I'm still, I'm actually 18 at that moment. I wasn't even able to drink while I was in my legally drink, I'll say, while I was at college. And a teacher pulls me over, and it was interesting. It was one of my business teachers. And so this was an extra class that I had taken on top of all my programming. And so he pulls me aside and he says, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to become a computer programmer. I'm going to go to Toronto and I'll get a job." And he said, "Oh, no, you're not." And he said, "You're a leader, you're outgoing, you have all of these qualities that are not of a programmer."
Right.
And he said, "You're an entrepreneur. You're going to be an entrepreneur." And that was like the first time I'd ever heard the word. My mom worked as a shelver. My dad was a factory worker. And I literally went home and I'm like, "Oh my God, like, what does he mean? What's an entrepreneur?" There was no internet, right? There was nothing I could go and Google. I couldn't ask Siri. The library was shut. And so I go back the next day and I say, "Okay, what's an entrepreneur? What do I do?" And the words he said to me are the words that I've based every move in my company on. And that was, he said, "An entrepreneur finds a need and fills the gap." And I
Love
was
that.
like, okay. And so I went home that day and I'm scouring through newspapers, kind of looking at things. And I see this one company and it says, they're looking for an accounting software. And so I just investigate that. They're in Oakville. I think I'm going to drop in. And I literally dropped in and I said, "Tell me about this accounting thing you're looking for." And they said to me, "We pay $5,000 a month for our accounting services," because, people didn't have computers.
Right.
They weren't on the desktops of businesses even yet. Because I'm graduating in 1985. And they said to me, "We want to kind of wean ourselves away from this." And I was like, "Okay, there is the gap I can fill." And literally, I like made up a business card the next day, and I said, "Would it be okay if I gave you a quote for hardware?" So now I needed to sell them a computer that was $25,000. A printer was $8,000. I needed to buy one myself, by the way.
It's
And
crazy.
I needed to offer services that I would come in and set up all their accounting, and replace the system that they had. Now, I knew none of this. I knew how to do none of this. I'd never even seen accounting software, but I knew logistics protocol, and I know how to learn. So that was it. I pitched them, and they accepted my proposal.
Your teacher was 100% right, because most people would stop at the "I have no idea how to do this," but
Mhm.
you went deeper. It's never about the how. It's always the principle, and you were, exactly on principle. Like, I know how to learn. I probably did the harder stuff so far, and it's very, very interesting how guided you were. And guys, the reason why we touched upon this is because Tracy is literally being this voice for women across the world right now, right? The voice that she heard, the guiding voice, the inspiring voice. And we're definitely going to circle back to that. But your story really reminds me of Michael Singer. He wrote the Surrender Experiment. Are you familiar with them?
No, but I'll look that up later.
This He's a guy who just wanted to meditate in the woods.
Hmm.
That's it. He was a hippie. But he said, "You know what? I'm just going to surrender to life. Wherever life guides me, I'm going to listen and I'm going to do it. I'm not going to question it, second guess it." And in time, he found a passion for programming. And he created this medical software and sold it for like a huge amount of money. I think he also became the CEO of Oracle or something like that.
Wow.
and he built a tremendous community of people who love to meditate. And yeah, so that's I feel like that's very much you as well. Like, life called you and you listened, you trusted it.
I continue to this day, between guiding, listening, downloading, and then of course assisting others with um, the messages that I have for them and what they need to hear. That's pretty well it.
Beautiful, beautiful. And tell us about legacy life. How are you helping people build their legacies?
Well, it's really interesting. So I've been trying to develop this legacy life for a very long time, like decades.
Mm.
But the technology, the steps, nothing kind of had fulfilled yet, right? And then, of course, about a year and a half ago, it all came together. And I realized because I was in the internet marketing space very early, back in 2005. I already started developing on the internet in 92 before it was even called that. And so all of a sudden, I have this internet technology. And I realized that now, where we are today, it's the ability for us to leverage all of this in order for somebody to fulfill their legacy life, because as entrepreneurs we always want the freedom. That's where we are all going.
Right.
I want to be free,
I love that.
and
Mhm.
financially and time and things of that nature. So that's really the principle behind legacy life. It's really about aligning your divine message. So the purpose that you were brought here to do, and it is aligning it to your purpose driven goals. So that which you want to accomplish, so you can reach millions, because it's about the impact that anyone who is here to play a bigger game, make the world a better place, has that vision that goes beyond you. That's what the foundation of legacy life is. And then the major difference is we're not leaving a legacy, we're living it from our overflow. So this is about so much abundance that you can, of course, serve the world philanthropically. And that's,
Mm.
again, usually I created this legacy life wheel, and at the top of it is philanthropy and freedom. That's where we're all going towards. It's a question of now, how do we get there?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's exactly it. That's exactly the thing. And I love, that we're having this conversation. The vision for my business is empower entrepreneurs, eliminate poverty.
Ah, nice.
Right.
Beautiful.
And I think that's exactly the key. It's forget about leaving a legacy, live it instead. And
Mm-hmm.
to me personally, that's also being, we talked about, I interviewed Derek Rydell yesterday, and we talked deeply about knowing yourself. Knowing yourself. And I was high as a kite, by the way, because I bought this thing, this vape pen, accidentally
Oh,
put in
yeah.
too much nicotine, and I'm like, you know what, Derek? I'm doing my best to follow along, but I'm high as a motherfucker right now. And he was so gentle. He was so cool about it. Yeah,
Funny.
I got it fixed, but yeah. Anyway, um, and I think that's really it. Living your legacy, like knowing who you are deeply, trusting that, and really tuning into your intuition, to your guidance. And I think you're really a master in that, whether you're conscious of it or not. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying the episode. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're making more than six figures and you want to collapse time between where you are right now and your goals, you want to scale your business with a lot more freedom, a lot more fun, a lot more joy from this experience. And like I mentioned, do it faster. I have something that will help. Just like I did my clients. For example, Yoshwin was actually afraid to grow his $120 million a year business because he was afraid he was going to make a mistake that would cost him millions. I quickly got him unstuck and well on his way to doubling the business. Another example, Jessica, she was making 10K a month, but she was stressed out, overwhelmed, overworked, close to burnout, and she was actually kind of hating her business. She quickly scaled to 25K a month while actually working less and having more fun in the business. And I do it through my Warrior Shaman system. If you'd like to learn more about how this system can help you achieve your goals, like I mentioned, with more freedom, fun, and just less grind, less hustle, there's a link below where you can learn more. Now let's get back to the episode.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's a funny thing that you say that, right? Because it's also a philosophy that I teach, is that you can't read the label from inside the jar. It's very
Yeah.
hard to see sometimes what your own, I'll call it, gifts are.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. That's why it's useful to have like an external perspective. But that's my perspective on living the legacy life. I would love to hear yours. Like how do you get your people to live their legacy today?
Well, it's really about um, tapping in to their expertise. Right. So everybody has something that they're really good at, particularly if you're in business, right? And a lot of times they undervalue themselves, or they complicate their own businesses with too much technology, too much social
Right.
media, too much something. And they don't focus in back to the basics. Again, as somebody who started a company where all we had was the telephone and the yellow pages, there wasn't all of these other distribution channels, which of course I love, because this allows for us to do the global and the reach millions. But it brings me back to, and I start my clients there as well, back to basics. And so that really means having your clear identity of who your right fit client is, crafting a high ticket offer for them. We're not going to worry at this point about the big impact we're making. This is about leveraging other people. When we train others well, and then they go off and do it, and they go off and do it, and they go off and do it, that's really, it's kind of this mushroom growth effect, what I call the movement, right? You're
Right.
creating a movement. And so it's about bringing 10 people into your life at a high ticket offer price. And then we simplify it. The delivery of your program is simple. The objectives are simple, help them to achieve their goal. And that's
Right.
really what it's like. And it's so refreshing after somebody particular, even myself, who had 782 websites, who had thousands of funnels, who had monster lists and monster this all over the place, of which it was overwhelming, it was truly distracting, and it was complicating the message, right? Which is, hey, we're here to strive for betterment for ourselves, others, and of course, if your vision is big enough, for humanity and the planet. And so now everything is boiled down to simplicity. We get the client able to reach their core people and then
Mhm.
start their own movement.
That is so cool. And it's surprising how many people like are extremely successful on the outside, but when you look at their businesses, it's like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory if they were all nuts.
Mhm.
It's incredible, but it's natural in a sense because we do tend to overcomplicate things. It's harder in many ways, especially when you're trying to kind of figure it out yourself. It's harder to simplify. It's kind of like Mark Twain said, I didn't have time to write something short, so I wrote something long instead. That's our tendency.
Mhm. Yes.
Um, it does make life harder for the team, especially for the clients because they're confused. And getting back to that first principles, I think is exceptionally powerful. Um, what got you into this space? I mean, a lot of people would be happy running a software company, What
Yeah.
got you into this space of helping people in this way?
Yeah, so it goes back to a couple of things. The listening, right? In particular. So when I started the software company and got into technology, I knew that technology, what this new thing was, which at the time it was a computer program and DOS, right?
Right.
So I knew that was where the world was going, but I didn't quite understand what we were going to be doing. So I was constantly finding the need, filling the gap, right? So software was the next gap that needed to be filled. Everyone had, in particular, accounting software. So let's say ACPAC, Great Plains, Sage, those types of softwares. Well, they always had a piece that was missing. So we wrote a fax distribution product. And then we wrote a Palm Pilot project for it so that everybody could scan. I mean, way back in the long before QR codes, all of this technology. So we were already developing and filling the gap. And then it was one day we're on the beach and we've got our three kids, my husband. So my husband and I have worked together for 30 years, side by side,
That's
24/7.
so
I
cool.
couldn't do it without him. It is absolutely perfect. And then ultimately we had our three kids at home as well. So we had this beautiful scenario and said you need to be home, right? So we actually schooled had our kids do internet school because I was a speaker and I was traveling all over the world. I wanted everyone to be able to come with me, right?
Mm.
So that was the thing. But so we were sitting on the beach with the software company, and he got a phone call from Walmart. And when Walmart calls, you have to jump because every second there's an issue, it's millions of dollars lost.
Right.
So,
Hmm.
of course, he's reacting. He's, we have programmers, we have everyone building this software technology that integrates to Walmart. And so it was that day when he came back from that call, and because he had to leave, I was like, you know what? I don't think the software industry is where we need to be anymore, right?
Mm.
And so it was so funny because then I was like, okay, what is our next step? And literally, I walk into a bookstore like 3 days later, and there's an entire wall of books on the World Wide Web. And I was like, oh my God, what is that? Right. So
Mm.
there we go. And they're talking about the super information highway. I had to be 14 books. I literally come back to the, office with them. And I'm like, this is our next step. And that's where then the jump to the internet came into play. And we started filling the gaps in that. And that's really where my leadership started to come into play because I played a back seat at the software company. I was the accountant, I was a developer, I was the CEO, but I wasn't out in front. Once I moved into the internet marketing arena, that's where I was like, I have to lead women. That's where it really started to push me forward because I attended an event. There was 16 men on the stage, not one woman. And I said, it was called the World Internet Summit. And I said, on that stage, it's impossible. I said, I'm going to be on that stage within the year. And
Mm.
it was unbelievable. Within 5 months, not only was I on that stage, but they paid me to be there. I had won New Internet Marketing Success of the Year. They flew me all the way from California to Singapore to appear on my very first stage in front of 3,400 people. And that's why I've spoken in 39 countries. I was picked up by the World Internet Summit organization. It was me and 15 men. I had replaced one of them. And then my goal became, ensure that women were moving into the internet marketing field and they were getting onto stages like myself.
That is so cool. I Yeah, I love that. I love that. Like you set the goal, and it's, for anybody listening, saying yes to your leadership or saying realizing that you need to step up your leadership game is not easy, but probably this was the motivator that you needed to really make a difference in the world and say, you know what, I don't care if it's hard, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yes, exactly. Hard, new. It was like becoming an entrepreneur. I didn't have any of those skills, right? You develop them, you learn them. And when I moved into internet marketing in the 2005 area, that was the first exposure I had to mentors and coaches, and that was a game changer. I
Right.
invested like 100 grand in 3 months. I was like, I want my next coach. I want my next coach. I want my next coach, because in the software arena, it was secretive. Nobody talked. There was no assisting each other. There was no
Yeah.
Shark Tank where you could, pitch and get help. There was none of that. And then this whole new world of coaches and mentors opens up, where somebody who's been to somewhere before you will guide you. That's again where I was like, I'm going to pave the path for women. And I paved it in publishing. I paved it in for speaking. And there's so many areas, getting on television, all of these areas that I opened up to ensure that, again, women knew it was possible, and they followed those steps.
That is so cool. And I'm sure like a huge catalyst was your, the coaches that you had. It's always like, regardless whether the coaching experience is good or not, you always have something that will leapfrog you forward. Always. As
Hmm.
long as you're open to it, it will come. It will come. But yeah, it's exactly like having somebody by your side is tremendous. I mean, I'm, like standardly speaking, I should be a mindset and business coach. I feel like I'm something else. I'm something else completely. But I have a mindset and business coach as well. I don't always do exactly what my coach says because it might not exactly fit. But just knowing that she's there just
Hmm.
gives me so much more room to think and be more creative. It's so powerful. It makes such a big difference. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Tracy, what's a question that you are not generally asked in interviews and you would love to be asked?
Um, wow. A question that I'm not generally asked. Um, I, I don't know, my underlying principles. I mean, it's spiritual. There's so many avenues that, and it really, when I take a look at the stuff that we're doing, it's really a duty, a moral obligation to serve those who are waiting for you. And it really propels from that. And of course, I've spent the last 20 years adding a layer of spirituality to my business acumen.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. That's literally what we're doing on the show. We're going into deep strategy, but also deep spiritual. Here's a question that maybe you've never been asked. If you were to hear that voice again that you heard back when you were 3, if you were
Mhm.
to connect with that voice right now, what do you feel it would say?
I feel it would say, good job so far. But there's a lot of work still to be done. And I know it. And to keep going, and to understand that, it's all about how many can you serve. And that's, I think, definitely one of the things that I teach now. Continue to serve would be the message, because a lot of times, especially when you're in the internet marketing field, and as a programmer, and funnily enough, as an introvert, okay, people would never know that about me. That's why I got into programming. That's why I'm an accountant. That's why
Me too.
I love to, I've built thousands of websites. I was a coder, all of it. And so for me to always be outside of my comfort zone, and that's part and parcel of what I teach as well, um, is that you're always in the free fall. And to have the faith, and again, these are almost guided messages that I've received that I convey as well, that if they spoke to me again, it would really repeat that.
Yeah.
And that is, I've got my safety net. When I'm in free fall, and whether fear comes over or I wonder if I'm doing the right thing, the safety net is always there, and it catches me, and it continues to propel me forward if I have the faith that I'm guided. It's really coming along those principles,
Yeah.
and constantly ensuring that I'm serving, because back to that thread where I was going, where as an internet marketer and an introvert, I would love to just sit and muck, right? I could just make money and make money and make money by doing my own thing, but that is serving nobody. That serves one entity, maybe a little bit of my family. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm teaching as well. We are here to serve millions, quite frankly, each of us in some way, shape, or form. And so it is about getting out of your comfort zone. It is about serving those others. So as we all lift, as we climb, or, all the boats float when one rises, it's that kind of underlying thread that I'm constantly driven by, and that I ensure that others understand, especially if they are just serving themselves.
That is so cool. And again, it reminds me of Michael Singer's work, in the sense that he described in the book every single time he felt he was in this falling situation, or things like this catastrophe was about to happen, or sometimes it did. Every single time it just opened the door to something that was much better than anything he could have imagined. And that's kind of the thing, I kind of incorporated that into my work, and I call it the shaman mindset. The shaman turns shit into gold. Not just your past, but whatever shit you're going through right now, it's actually really
Mhm.
serving you in many, many different ways. And if you treat it with, hey, this is amazing, thank you so much, this is great, as hard as it is to do that in the moment, the faster you get out of there, because you got the lesson and you're free to move forward.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree, because there is so many incidents I can recount of, free falling, failure, disaster, the company, all sorts of, as somebody who's been in business now for 40 years, it has not been a rocket ride to the top, right? It's been a
I don't believe
tumultuous
it.
kind of a hurricane. But as you stated there, those incidents where I something happened that was almost catastrophic, or could take the business down, right? Including, COVID was the great equalizer of its time, in that, I had
Right.
2 years of speaking engagements all booked and ready to go. I was about to board a flight a day later for Costa Rica, UK, Egypt, two others after that. And so that literally wiped my income for 2 years. And it takes you back to that moment of like, well, okay, now what? What's the thing I'm supposed to be doing? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of, oh my God, we're dying, it's what's the thing I'm supposed to be doing? And that's where you go back to your quiet, you make sure you're listening, you seek the guidance, and you start on that next thread, because it's like, I liken things to a stepping stone. So we can walk a path way longer than we're supposed to. We might have had these warning symbols that said, go the next step, go the next step, and we don't. And
Yeah.
so it sometimes takes that boom to say, go the next step, because you have something different you need to be doing in order to, as I say, reach that mission that you're about to deliver.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, COVID was in many ways a huge blessing for me as well. And I know it was super rough for a lot of people, but it's kind of like it balances out in many ways. It's the yin and yang.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Tracy, you have a gift for the audience, right? You told me about your Quantum Leap Legacy quiz. Tell us a bit more about
Yeah.
the gift.
I love this because it took a while to create, and it revolves around a person taking the quiz, taking a test, and based on your score, it will determine if you need an income alignment, an influence accelerator, an impact awakening, or a freedom amplifier. And then based on the thread that you're in, kind of the channel that you're in, your legacy life focus point, it then tells you, where do you need to put your attention? Is it on community? Is it on visibility? Is it on systems, scale, things of that nature? So it's got these specific elements that you need to really focus in on for your business so that you can, start to create that kind of awakening of an accomplishment of that freedom lifestyle.
That is so cool. Guys, it's linked below, or if you're watching this on YouTube, below. If you're listening to this, check the description of the podcast. Check it out. I'm actually looking at it right now. Really fun website. So absolutely have a look. Take the quiz. Let us know in the comments what results you got, if, again, you're watching this on YouTube. And if you have any questions for Tracy, I will link her socials in the description as well. Tracy, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm definitely hoping to see you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bogdan.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And you know what? Something that's really, really frustrating for me is this thing that I keep hearing both from clients, both from people who regularly check out the content. They usually say, hey, I don't understand why this content is not getting hundreds of thousands, millions of views, downloads, because it's so freaking good. And I gotta be honest, instead of feeling happy about it, elated, I do feel kind of frustrated. I mean, like, why isn't it getting out there a lot more? So, you know what? If you'd like to help out with this goal, the best thing you can do if you're watching the video right now is give it a like, maybe share it with a friend, or if you're listening to the podcast and you're enjoying this show, giving the podcast a rating either on Apple Podcasts or wherever you are listening to your podcasts is a tremendous help. And if you do help out, I just want you to know that I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.